right, Buffalo Bills fans, welcome to another episode of The Walkthrough. I'm your host, Anthony Marino, here with you once again, part of the Overreaction Sports Network, brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. All right, well, the Buffalo Bills took care of business on Thursday Night Football against the Miami Dolphins. So now I'm recording this for you on a Sunday morning, a bit of a mini bye for the Bills. And, you know, thinking about it and was talking with Joe Miller, and it's like, yeah, I'll jump on Sunday morning and kind of talk to folks some of my thoughts, you know, not too much tied to the game. I think you've probably gotten all the analysis and breakdowns following the 31-21 victory. But as I look at it, kind of just where a few things stand for the Bills, where they're at right now, and figured I would just jump on for a little bit and chat with y'all. Right now, the Bills sitting at 3-0. For some of you, that might not be a surprise. Again, looking back to that week 1 game against the Baltimore Ravens, kind of, you know, was a little bit unsure of that. But then you take care of the New York Jets, you take care of the Miami Dolphins. And again, you're sitting at 3-0 with a 2-0 record in the AFC East. And, you know, Sean McDermott says all the time, winning the AFC East, that's the top priority when it comes to the regular season. So the Bills putting themselves in a good position, at least for right now, as you're 2-0 in the AFC East, and again, 3-0 overall. Now, I'm sure many of you talking about the 1 seed, and of course, that victory over the Baltimore Ravens, definitely important there. A little bit early for me to start talking about the 1 seed, but again, when you are sitting at 3-0 and you do hold a tiebreaker with that, you know, head-to-head matchup with the Ravens, you can talk about it in a little bit, but for me, that might be just a little bit too soon. The Bills will be back at Highmark Stadium next weekend, a bunch of home games to start the year, which I kind of like, you know, when you want to get off on the right foot, hosting the New Orleans Saints. At least I'm recording this. It's Sunday morning, right? So depending on when you listen to this podcast, we'll know how the Saints did in their matchup against the Seattle Seahawks on Sunday afternoon. But with that, the Saints are kind of in a tough spot. You know, as you look at things, a bit of a reset of a year, I guess you would say, for them. And will be interesting to see how things kind of continue for the team as they move forward this year. Probably a little too early to talk about tanking for draft picks, but when you've got, you know, unfortunately for Saints fans, Spencer Rattler, Tyler Shuff as your, you know, quarterback options, it's going to be a little bit of a tough season. But we'll talk more about the Saints game, you know, in the preview episode of the walkthrough leading up to that later in the week. Like I said, wanted to talk to you a little bit just about where things are with the Bills right now. And I've kind of just got 3 things that I want to highlight with all of you today. But listen, before we do get to that, I got to let you know that today's show is also brought to you by our friends at Anchor Bar. Enjoy the games at your local Anchor Bar or order online for pickup or delivery. Anchor Bar is home of the original Buffalo chicken wing. It's the place to watch the Buffalo Bills and all your other favorite sports teams. Go to anchorbar.com to see all locations and info for online ordering. Anchor Bar original Buffalo wings are fresh, never frozen, jumbo, high-quality wings. Their wings are deep fried and they're sauced to your liking. And listen, they got over 24 varieties of sauces and dry rubs to choose from. In addition to their famous original Buffalo wings, all Anchor Bar locations have a wide variety of menu choices such as appetizers, boneless wings, chicken tenders, pizza, beef on weck, fresh burgers, sandwiches, salads, wraps, and so much more. And listen, currently Anchor Bar has 16 locations with 3 new locations opening this fall. Tucson, Arizona, where I'm sure you will probably run into John Fina if you are there, Frisco, Texas, and Raleigh, North Carolina. So big thanks to everyone at Anchor Bar for supporting the walkthrough and all of the shows here at the Overreaction Sports Network. And I should add, of course, take a quick second, you know, wherever you're consuming this show, make sure you like, comment, subscribe in the podcast form on the YouTube page, because not only do you get to walk through each and every episode, but of course, all of the great shows that we have here at the Overreaction Sports Network. So listen, now let's jump into some of these thoughts. And this first one, I think as we kind of talk about it, it's interesting because the main storyline this offseason was around James Cook, right? It was his contract, at least at the time leading up to training camp, right? He was that one player that had not gotten a contract extension at least those guys off their rookie contracts, right, that we had talked about. I'm sure, Connor McGovern will be in the conversation at some point, but I'm talking about those guys coming to their second NFL contract, right? Khalil Shakir, Greg Rousseau, Terrell Bernard, Christian Benford, all get taken care of. And there was so much debate around giving a contract to a running back, right? And that was, was he going to hold out? Was he going to hold in? How was that going to take place? Missing some optional OTAs. Sorry, I was trying to blank on the word there. But, you go through with this, and there was so much discussion across the fan base, right? And you'd see a lot of people, and again, I'm talking about online, sometimes in the comments, and, there's so much more to the world outside of social media and the comments that come about. But you would see a lot of folks just be like, he doesn't deserve that. If he doesn't want to be here, trade him away and just start Ray Davis, and and all that kind of chatter that was out there. And I know it was out there. I mean, I would write plenty of articles on BuffaloRumblings.com about James Cook, potential contracts for him. I'd post different things on Twitter like, hey, what if this is the way the contract was structured? And people really were just like, they should just get rid of him, trade him away. And it's like, okay, one, the guy's looking for a contract to stay in Buffalo. Like, he wasn't demanding a trade. He wasn't doing any of these things looking to get out of town. He wanted to be here, but he had a number that he wanted to be paid. And, based on a couple of somewhat cryptic social media tweets, maybe from him, more so from his brother, I think people jumped to a conclusion of what he was looking for. Well, now you fast forward and it's like, okay, we're 3 weeks into the season, and James Cook has been better than advertised, right? I mean, yeah, you sign a 4-year, $48 million contract. You can argue, hey, is that something you would want to pay to a running back? Did you think that was too much, or this and that? That point is moot right now, right? Because now he's on the roster. He's making dynamic plays. You can argue that he may have been the best player on the field on Thursday Night Football, second to Josh Allen. And James Cook is delivering through these first 3 weeks, continues to find the end zone. And honestly, when you think to the other night, dominating the carries, right? Dominating the touches at running back. You had maybe 4 touches from Ty Johnson, none from Ray Davis, right? He had that one target on kind of the shot put from Allen to kind of get to him, and kind of a little bit of an awkward pitch. So with that, right, I mean, James Cook, at least through 3 weeks, all those folks that said, oh, the Bills can win without him, get him out of town, seem a little bit quiet right now. And I say that just because, as we go through this, and I think as not that you're going to remember this conversation come in the 2026 offseason, but sometimes with it, it's like we just have to let those things play out. And I'm really happy that James Cook has, received that contract extension, that he's here in Buffalo, right? Whatever his hold in was short-lived, to say the least. I think it's pretty obvious he wants to be here. His teammates want him here. And through these first 3 weeks of the season, he has delivered at such a fantastic level that I'm just excited about where things continue to go. I mean, so many people, and if you play fantasy football, and I realize, right, it's called fantasy football for a reason, but there was an expectation of, okay, he scored 16 touchdowns last year. Like, there's going to have to be some kind of a regression that will come. At least so far, it is not. And it's been great to see, and I hope that it continues. Maybe they, and I get it when people would say, oh, last year he only played 47% of the snaps. He's playing much more than that so far this season. I want them to kind of pace themselves with him just a little bit when it comes to this. And I would like to see a little bit more out of Ray Davis, right? Like, for him to get some touches just here or there to give Cook a little bit of a spell. But for right now, I love what I'm seeing from James Cook, and that part has been fantastic so far. A couple days removed from the game to kind of move forward, something that haven't loved so far, and I don't think many folks have, has been the play of the defensive line, right? I mean, Ed Oliver in week 1, phenomenal. Week 2 against the New York Jets, a great showing by the defense, right? The Jets are 0-11 on third down. But that game seemed to be a little bit of the anomaly, at least as you're watching it, right? I mean, we saw what the Baltimore Ravens offense did Then you see with Miami, at least on third down the other night, and that's the piece where there's like a little bit of a caveat here, right? Because on first and second down, the Bills seem to do a pretty good job. And then on third and fourth down, I think the Dolphins were like a combined, 11 for 15 or 11 for 16 when it came to conversions, which, you're getting this team into third down situations, but then you're not getting off the field. And I think a lot of fingers have been pointed at the defensive line because that's, they weren't getting the pressure on Tua in the backfield. Did some good things against the run, right? But there's I feel like there's always going to be criticism when it comes to that group based on the investment that the team has made in free agency and draft picks, and just that it seems to be that area where it hasn't always been where you want it to be, right? And you think back to, not too long ago when you had a defensive line with Jerry Hughes and Marcel Darius, Kyle Williams, Mario Williams, and it was just like, oh my gosh, you got 4 guys that are all, Pro Bowl type quality players. And, now you look at it and you're just trying to get that formula right. And some things just haven't hit just yet. Now, you take a couple of days and you think to yourself, okay, well, listen, the Dolphins passed for like 150 yards on Thursday night. Like, that's nothing crazy. And probably about 30 of those yards came in the last drive where it was just like, okay, it's a 2-score game with a little bit of time left. The Dolphins are trying to make a play. It's like, in my mind, it's just like, okay, maybe try a little something, but you might be just, getting one of your guys hurt in this type of situation, trying to make a miracle happen in the last 30 seconds. But anyway, right before what I would call garbage time, I mean, they had maybe like 120 yards passing, a lot of dink and dunk, a lot of things being kind of kept in front of the Bills and contained. So at least if you're scouting the box score, you're thinking to yourself, all right, the defensive line, they must have done okay. But then if you're watching the game, you see some of those sustained drives, and, that gets a little bit frustrating. And so, you try to add a little context to it, right? Even that first drive that the Dolphins scored on, I mean, a short field based on the kickoff return, right? Already in Bills territory to start the game. So, I'm trying not to overreact is where I'm going with this, because you look at it and you think, okay, there are some reinforcements that are coming. You've got Michael Hoyt that'll be returning from suspension after 6 games. Same with Larry Ogunjobi, right? So here are 2 guys that the team, signed as free agents. Obviously, there's been more optimism around Hoyt than there has Ogunjobi, but, you can look at the defensive tackles and how they've been playing so far. These rookies might need a little bit more time to develop. And, I think with this, certainly Deion Walker, right, has a big play at the end to help force the interception. That is great. A splash here or there. But he was playing less snaps because he missed some assignments earlier in the game. TJ Sanders, been a little bit of a struggle on early downs for him. Second round pick, like, listen, I, as much as anyone, had some decent expectations for him that just based on the playing time and opportunities that he was going to get early, that he would be able to flash for the Bills. Hasn't been there just yet. And listen, we're talking about 3 games into his rookie season. So I'm not saying this in any sort of like panic or dismay or anything. No, none of that whatsoever. Just that it's going to take a little bit of time. And when you lose Ed Oliver after week 1, kind of the magnifying glass is going to be on these rookie defensive tackles a little bit more than you would like. But, Ed Oliver, by all reports, the walking boot is off, so we hope that he will be back soon, maybe even able to play against the New Orleans Saints, as we've said before. He has not gone on the injured reserve, so I feel okay about that. And in a few weeks, you will get Larry Ogunjobi back. So, as I look at this, like, okay, there's an opportunity here. Just hope that it doesn't linger too long for Ed Oliver, and he can. I'm not saying back at the same level that he played at against the Baltimore Ravens, but to be Ed Oliver, like to come in and play 60% of the snaps, provide some of that pass rush from the interior that the team seemed to be lacking, certainly against the Dolphins the other night. Another rookie, Landon Jackson, 3rd round pick. There's definitely been some conversation there. I laugh when folks are like, he's a bust. And it's just like, can we not consider someone a bust that, has just been inactive through his first 3 NFL games? Like, I think that's a little bit of a reach, especially for a third-round pick. I will be curious to see if he is active against the Saints coming up next weekend, right? I mean, you've got the Bills in a situation with Michael Hoyt coming back, after 6 games. It's like, okay, Javon Solomon gets to play a bit in those first 3 weeks, contributing some defensive snaps, mostly on special teams. I'd like to see Landon Jackson get that opportunity. And I realize like the learning curve is a little bit different for each player. But let's see what the young guy can do. Like, maybe going to be a little bit of a, maybe going to look like a little bit of a rookie during those first few games, but at least coming up with the New Orleans Saints, like the Bills should be a heavy favorite, maybe an opportunity to get him some work and to give some rest to Joey Bosa, who played 87% of snaps the other night. Way too much for me. And I think that goes kind of to the piece where, well, when you've got Javon Solomon active, he doesn't give you a lot in that kind of like the size category, right? Like more of a speed rusher, a little bit undersized. Someone like Landon Jackson gives you some of that length. Let's see if, what he is able to do. And I hope they give him a look, because we're going to see, like, the Bills are going to have to do some roster gymnastics before these two guys come back. But I'm curious to see what we're going to get from Jackson. I want to see him get a few snaps here and there. And it's kind of one of those, as we said before, like, hey, we're going to live with some mistakes for Walker and TJ Sanders because they're rookies and, they're getting this chance. I want to see Landon Jackson get that opportunity as well. Certainly when you talk about the defensive reinforcements coming, Maxwell Harrison hasn't been a lot of news yet on his recovery and what that looks like. I don't think the team needs to do anything to rush him back. But I think to the second half of the season, if he can start to work in a bit too, to get him some of that experience would definitely be necessary. And I'm excited to see the young guy on the field. So, speaking of rookies, I got one more I want to talk about. I'm going to take a quick drink of the coffee here. It is funny for those of you on the video side, you see this is a number 14 mug. You might think it's a Stephon Diggs. This is actually a Sammy Watkins coffee mug I got from my sister years ago. And I've always just liked this mug and I keep it all the time. And it's reminds me of the good old Sammy Watkins era here for the Buffalo Bills. But one last rookie I want to talk about, kind of the belle of the ball so far, Jackson Hawes, 5th round pick, played at Yale, then transferred to Georgia Tech, scored his first NFL touchdown in the game against the Dolphins. And there's just been so much praise for this young guy. And you think to yourself, like, again, a 5th round tight end. But, it is great for the Bills because here's a guy that has just been fantastic as a blocker, right? Kind of brings that Lee Smith kind of edge to things. Has made Alec Anderson's role a little bit obsolete so far when it comes to the offense, which is interesting, and I think will be something to monitor when it comes to the future of offensive line contracts and what kind of happens with Edwards and McGovern and Anderson. But that's for a future show. But Jackson Hawes being fantastic as a blocker, as a rookie, right, coming in and being able to play a good number of snaps. But what I really like about it is, of course, then if you go in a 3 tight end lineup, as opposed to Alec Anderson, now you have someone that's a pass catching option and what he can do for the team. I mean, in my opinion, right, the biggest catch of the night in week 1 against the Ravens, a huge catch and like a little bit of a bobble and like kind of showed some great concentration to bring that in. But a huge play for the Bills that you're thinking at first, like, oh, is that Dalton Kincaid? And it's like, no, that's Jackson Hawes, your blocking tight end. Then getting a little bit of the flip / pitch from Allen in the end zone on that play on Thursday night. And, you think to yourself, like, okay, to have this guy be able to play as a fantastic blocker and to have the ability to find an open spot, to go downfield, to make a catch, what he can do, I like that. Right. And I know sometimes it'll be like, listen, we need to see more from Palmer or Coleman or Shakir. Like, I want to see more targets going to Elijah Moore, all of those things. And that's fine. But, going back to James Cook, talking about the Bills' ability to run the football, what that does for them, just, then if you've got these 3 tight end sets It's like, well, yeah, this guy's the blocking tight end, but he can catch too. So when that comes into the mix, that's a good thing. And I think it might have been Jerry Ostrowski that was talking about this. You get a little bit of that attitude as a blocker, that might rub off on some of your other tight ends a little bit by osmosis, right? So we have certainly seen Dalton Kincaid as a much more physical blocker early on this season than we had the past 2 years. And it's like, to me, gosh, if he can be an improved blocker over what he'd been through his first 2 years, and again, what we've seen from Kincaid as a pass catcher so far, that's fantastic. And of course, Dawson Knox brings a great blend of both. But Jackson Hawes, I'm excited about what the young guy has done. I know Bills fans have been very excited so far, and it was really nice to see. And I know the video was all over social media. He scores that first touchdown, how his teammates swarm to him. That's something that, whether you talk about the culture or what it's like in the locker room for the Bills, there was a genuine excitement across all of those players. Keon Coleman going and getting the ball in the end zone and making sure he saved it for the rookie. That's one of those cool moments as a teammate to recognize that. And I thought that was pretty fantastic. So, it's like one of those things in sports when you see it. Growing up, I was more of a Jackson Hawes type of guy in sports that I played, right? Like a little bit under the radar, when you did something well, like you wanted you guys to feel good for you. And they certainly did on Thursday night. So that was great to see. So listen, those were the things I really wanted to talk about. I always appreciate you guys tuning in each and every week. It's been a lot of fun bringing the walkthrough to you. Again, I appreciate Joe and John and Jerry for bringing me on board to be part of the network. And listen, Zig Fracassi is doing a show with us each and every week now, too, with Jerry Ostrowski, which I love to see. So that's fantastic as we bring you more and more shows, more and more content throughout the season. Always appreciate you guys tuning in. As I said before, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. That helps us reach more Buffalo Bills fans and more conversation going back and forth, because we want to hear from all of you when it comes to your thoughts on the team. So, all right, listen, it is time for me to get out of here. Enjoy the weekend. I know it's a little different when the Bills aren't playing, but maybe there's another matchup that you want to watch, or maybe you're just catching Red Zone, sitting on the couch today. Whatever it is, enjoy yourself. Thanks for tuning into the walkthrough. I'm going to get out of here for now. And as always, go Bills.